Class, today our objective is to indicate the head and the vise of a mill. We call that tramming. We're going to use an indicator, which is pictured right here, and we're going to indicate it within a thousandth per inch. After I get done, I'll expect you to be able to do this within a time limit of 15 minutes. We have our tools already here, and the important reason to properly align the mill is so that when you cut a surface with the mill, it cuts a completely parallel surface. If the mill is not entrammed, it's either cocked one way or cocked forward to backwards, then your end mill is either going to cut ridges into it or cut it non-parallel to the other surface. The reason we've got to indicate the vices in so that we can cut a 90 degrees angle to the back surface of the vise, so that this vise face is in parallel with the axis of the mill. We call this the x-axis. What we're going to use this morning is we're going to use a check sheet, a mill tram sheet. In order to follow it, I'm going to hand out a mill tram sheet to everybody. Take this over, write notes on it and so forth, so that when you go to tram the mill in, you can use it as a follow check sheet. Here is the pass them on around. Does everybody now have a check sheet? Okay. We will start with item number 1. Look at your list. We have to basically mount the indicator. I use this type of an indicator. There's other ways to mount an indicator. This is the one I personally prefer. We put already into the mill, we've got a 1/4 inch collet that will hold the shaft of my indicator. We tighten this up. Mount the indicator, bring the needle forward just a little bit, about at a 45 degrees forward angle. We're going to put the mill in neutral. Item number 2 on your checklist. Be sure it is in neutral at this time so that it can be revolved here. Don't forget, all the way forward is in high gear, all the way backwards is in low gear. Do not forget, when you're all done, to put it into a gear and not leave it into neutral when you start using the machine. And then item number 3, we're going to use our release. We're going to lower our quill until we turn about a half a turn on our indicator. Now we're going to revolve the indicator from the back position like this to the forward position like this. We're going to take note of the reading. We want the reading to be equal. It must read the same when it's turned backwards as when it's turned forward. In order to get it to read equal or to adjust the mill, we must loosen the 3 side bolts. 1, 2, 3. These right here. Just lightly loosen them. Then we're going to use item number 6, this gear right here, to tilt the mill forward or backwards. Be sure these are loosened before you start cranking on the gear, or you can strip a gear and damage the mill. After we have adjusted it so that the two readings from full reverse to full forward are identical, we will then retighten these bolts. Retighten the 3 bolts. Now we're going to revolve the indicator from side to side like this. We want to be able to have the indicator read no change from side to side. In order to do that, we will loosen these 4 bolts on the face. 1, 2, 3, 4. We will then use this gear right here to move the mill from side to side in order to adjust it so that when I revolve this, I am now in tram, or I have a 0 differential reading. When I am done, be sure and tighten these 4 bolts. If you don't, it will go right back out of tram and you will be unhappy. The device in itself. I'm going to bring the quill back up. We want to indicate this portion of the vise, the back or the solid jaw of the vise. Never the floating jaw, because the floating jaw will move on you. You want to use the back or what they call the solid jaw of the vise. We'll just crank the mill forward on what we refer to as the y-axis. Tilt it back slightly, tilt the indicator knob back, bring the wheel down, bring it forward until we have now set the indicator to about a half a turn. We will move it back and forth on the x-axis and observe the reading. If the reading changes, we will loosen these 2 bolts, 1 on each side. We can use a soft hammer on this portion of the vise to lightly tap it either here or over here to adjust it. Once we have adjusted it and it is in tram, we will then retighten these bolts and double check the indicator by moving back and forth. Sometimes the act of tightening the bolts will cause the vise to go out of tram, so always check after you do your tightening. Okay, the last thing we'll do is we'll basically remove our indicator. And be sure at this time to put it back into gear. Again, to get it into gear, we push the handle in, allow it to come up. We may have to try turning the quill in by hand until it drops into gear. This basically concludes the demonstration. If you look on chapter 69 of your handbook, it will give you some more details on tramming a mill. We will now break off into pairs. You will then tram the mill, take your turns of tramming it, bring it within 1/1000th per inch. I would like to stress the importance of tramming a mill. If the mill is not into tram, you will not get precision work. Do not assume the mill is in tram when you first come into class. Everybody leaves the mill out of tram. You have to assume that. So tram the mill. Is there any questions concerning the procedure here? Does everybody have an indicator? Joe, you can borrow mine if you don't have one. And everybody find a mill and let's get busy. Thank you.